Hello everyone, welcome to my kitchen. I'm Velmore. Today I will be bringing you two recipes from the Final Fantasy XIV cookbook, although it may feel more like four. The first and simpler of the recipes is a mushroom and pepper kebab. The second recipe is two regional cocktails that share the same name and the same ginger tea as a base. One is mixed with bourbon and raspberry liqueur, and the second is mixed with sake and melon liqueur. This is Forest Miq'abob and Crimson Cider. Let's get started. So both the cider recipes start with a base of ginger tea, and it's going to start with water, sliced ginger, pink peppercorn, cumin seeds, sugar, dried loquats, honey, and then the recipe calls for 1 orange and 2 limes, but it doesn't say to do anything with those, like juice them, zest them, cut them into quarters. So I'm just going to use a little chef's intuition here. So I think I'm just going to cut them in half, give them a little squeeze, and then toss them in. And so I'll start with the limes, and now the orange. So I determined that the pot I had that in wasn't big enough, so I transferred it into a bigger pot. You want to avoid doing that, especially because this recipe had sugar and honey in it, so that will tend to have already sunk to the bottom. So you just want to make sure you scrape everything out. So now I am just going to bring that to a boil and then turn it down and let it simmer for 25 minutes. Now that this has been simmering for 25 minutes, I'm just going to put it into a pitcher and let it chill overnight. So there's not much in the form of vegetable prepping for this recipe because the kebabs are going to cook everything whole with the exception of a tomato, which I am going to quarter. So I'm going to make a spice mixture that I'm eventually going to use to marinate the mushrooms. And that is going to start with some lavender, black peppercorn, and rosemary leaves. And then I am going to grind that up very finely. Now I'm going to put that seasoning into a bowl, put in some olive oil, balsamic vinegar, and salt. And I'm just going to mix that together. And now I'm going to put in my mushrooms and mix those around, making sure everything gets coated. And I'm going to let those sit and marinate for 30 minutes. So since I will be drinking 2 cocktails today, I'm going to have the first while I prep the rest of the food. So into my shaker of ice, I'm going to add some of my ginger tea, fresh lime juice, raspberry liqueur, and bourbon. And I'm going to give it a quick shake. And then I'm going to pour it into my lowball glass and finish it with some seltzer water. Now I will assemble my kebab. Start with mushroom, shishito pepper, mushroom, tomato, and mushroom. And now I'm going to load those onto my grill pan. And I'm going to cook those for about 10 or so minutes until the mushrooms get cooked through. So while that's finishing up, I will make my second cocktail, which is again going to start with my ginger tea, my Midori or melon liqueur, my sake, lemon juice, and then let's give it a shake. Pour it into my glass and finish with sparkling water. The Crimson Cider I felt was a bit of a ride. I did try some of the ginger tea by itself, both hot and cold, And the hot was unpleasant. The cumin seed overpowered everything else. It just had that really herby flavor to it. The flavors all mellowed together after I let it sit overnight. But it still was a little medicinal. It was definitely created to be mixed with something. In the green version, the lemon juice kind of helped to freshen that flavor up a bit. And then the melon liqueur was sweet, so it was a little sweeter than I would have liked. The actual crimson cider was delicious. The bourbon came through, the raspberry liqueur made it a little tart, and this is definitely the version of it that I prefer. The kebab was good, but I feel like it was missing a little something. One, I think it would have done very well for everything to be a little charred throughout the whole thing, but that can tend to lead to weird, mushy tomatoes, which brings me to my next point. Quartering the tomato was the wrong choice. I feel like this would have been better with some cherry tomatoes. They would have really taken on that char a little better and just would have added to that depth of flavor. Even more disappointing with just the size of everything, the shishito peppers didn't char either. Raw and or barely cooked, they're fine, but I think when you char one of them, that's just the best way to eat them, I think. The mushrooms, though, were the star of this dish. The lavender, the rosemary, and the vinegar, they made for this wonderful floral and sweet, just gave the mushrooms a ton of flavor. I hope you enjoyed. You can follow me on Instagram or Twitter at chef_Valmore. The links will be in the description below. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and come on back next week for another recipe.